Welcome. Thank you for joining the AC Spotlight on Amazon Studios in this conversation on I'm Your Woman. I'm Andrew Amateur. Here at the American Cinematheque, I manage the strategy that we use so that we're able to reach viewers just like yourself. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you're all staying safe out there. Please visit our website at americancinematheque.com for information on all upcoming programs, how to support the American Cinematheque, and becoming a member. I would like to thank Amazon Studios for making this conversation possible. I'm Your Woman is streaming now on Amazon Prime. I'm so excited to welcome the brilliant director Julia Hart, writer Jordan Horowitz, and star Rachel Brosnahan. Moderating tonight is our friend Jim Hemphill. I hope you all enjoy.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Jim Hemphill, and on behalf of the American Cinematheque, I'd like to welcome you to our discussion of I'm Your Woman, and it's my great pleasure to introduce the filmmakers behind the movie, director-writer Julia Hart, producer and writer Jordan Horowitz, and producer and actress Rachel Brosnahan. Welcome, everybody.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, Julia and Jordan, one of the things I really like about this movie, as well as some of your other movies that you've done together, is the way your movies are always kind of in a dialogue with other movies in the genre you're working in. And in the case of this one, you've obviously got, there's an explicit reference to The Godfather early on, and the whole thing is kind of in the vein of 70s crime movies like Friends of Eddie Coyle and even like Peckinpah's The Getaway, and I kept all kinds of movies running through my head as I was watching it. And I was curious for you, when you were writing the script, what were some of the cinematic reference points that you started with, and how did they inform the movie? What did you take from them? What were you reacting against?
Well, the ones you just mentioned were some of our main influences. So that's very cool that, because I feel like The Godfather, as you said, it's such a direct reference, but I love that you also got The Getaway and Friends of Eddie Coyle, because those ones we were definitely, and I love how you said we were definitely in dialogue with those as well. I think though the biggest one is Michael Mann's Thief. Jesse was Tuesday Weld's character Jesse in that film was definitely the biggest touchstone for where Gene started and developed. And another big one for us was Straight Time, the Dustin Hoffman film. Mm-hmm. But what we love in particular about Friends of Eddie Coyle, Thief, and Straight Time and movies like them are that the crime is integral to the plot, but it's so much more about characters and the psychological and emotional effects of the life they've chosen, or the life that's chosen them and has on them, but all have male protagonists. And so we love the idea of taking the germs of all of those films and creating one that centered a woman.
And I also just want to throw in that in general, touchstones for us, filmmaker touchstones are also, there's some Sidney Lumet. There's
You're Running on Empty.
Yeah, there's a lot of Martin Ritt, I think, and a lot of the stuff that Julia likes to do.
I smile because he's probably my favorite.
Yeah, Martin Ritt, I think in general tends to be our directing spirit animal. There's like a humanism in his.
And while there's nothing explicit referentially, it's just a general like he was telling stories about women and Black people as a white man before it was something that we were all talking about as a society as being something that there needed to be more of. And he was doing it in such an effortless.
Yeah, and he was telling intersectional stories too. Like it was the way he was going about doing that work. Humanism is what I think I just said, but that I think really encapsulates his work, and that spirit is something we try to bring to.
I'm so glad you guys brought up Martin Ritt, because I think he's kind of unfairly forgotten to a certain degree and underrated now.
Wild.
He's almost a victim of his own. He's almost too good in a way. It's like his style is so subtle and so confident that in a way I think it doesn't announce itself. And then people have kind of neglected him. So I'm really glad you brought him up. Rachel,
while we're talking about him, we should just specifically say, for people who are watching who maybe don't know him and his work for the reasons you just said, Norma Rae, which it's so interesting because Sally Field won the Oscar and her performance is incredible, but we don't talk about what an amazing director directed that film. Sounder.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Which
film.
I think was
Total
nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah. And I think Cecily Tyson.
Really?
Yeah. And then Paris Blues.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, HUD too, like everybody loves HUD.
Yeah.
Those are the films that really speak to us. Anyway,
No,
enough about Martin Ritt. I could go on all day.
Well, and the thief thing is great too, because it is, it is interesting that basically Rachel it's as though with Thief, you make the whole movie about the Tuesday Weld character, which is really cool. And Rachel, so I'm curious for you, when you got first of all, just how did this script come to you, and what did you respond to in it? Because on the one hand, it's such a great part, but it also, to me, seems like on the page, it would seem like an extremely challenging part, because it's very internal. There's not necessarily a lot of, there's not a lot of dialogue. She doesn't know a lot about what's happening. I mean, it seems like it would be a pretty tough role to play.
Well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. That all of those things, while really intimidating, were also a big part of what drew me to the script. My manager, Ken Lee, and Jordan have known each other for many, many, many years. And Ken
was, just to jump in, Ken was the first person I ever made friends with when I had my first internship in college.
I didn't know that.
Literally, he and I sat next to each other in the mail room at my first show business internship I ever had, when I was, I think, after my sophomore year in college or something. But yeah, we sat next to each other as interns in the mail room.
It feels so full circle that way, because Ken Lee is one of the most extraordinary people I have ever met, and that makes a lot of sense to me. But yeah, they've known each other forever, and Ken has been singing both of their praises. Ken had been singing both of their praises to me for a number of years, and had sent me Julia's films, and then ultimately sent the script my way. And I was so moved by Jean, by this quiet woman, as you mentioned, by her journey, by the pieces, and Julia helped me pull more of them out than I had even realized were in there. But I loved the moments in the script where Jean is saying that she's not capable of something while demonstrating that she's perfectly capable of the thing that she doesn't believe she is, and how her recognition of her own capability unfolds was something that I found incredibly moving. It also just was a journey. There's a story about motherhood that I had never seen before, and one that I had not really even heard very much about. And on a personal level, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to learn more about how many women out there struggle not only to have children, but however they find themselves becoming parents, sometimes struggle to bond with their children. And I love that this is sort of a recognition of, and a centering of, and also an honoring of that experience in a way that I had never seen before. But I also love finishing a script and having more questions than answers. And really, I finished this movie and felt moved by it in ways that I couldn't explain, and found myself thinking late at night about this character and this world before Julia and I had the opportunity to sit down and talk to each other. And it was and that was the end of it. that really sealed the deal.
Yeah, I think for the viewer, I think the movie has sort of similar effect on the viewer as what you're talking about from reading the script, in the way that it does kind of linger in the mind after you watch it. And one of the reasons it does, at least for me, is the fact that your character's transformation is really nicely kind of subtle and underplayed. It's not a movie where she suddenly becomes like a gun-toting badass immediately. And I really like that about it. But again, I also feel like that's something that makes it a little bit more challenging, both to play and I would think from a writing point of view. And I was wondering if all of you could talk about that, about that aspect of the character in the movie.
I mean, it was something that was born in Jean from the very beginning of thinking about her as a character before we even started writing her, was that we want, in wanting to explore the crime genre, and specifically 70s crime dramas, which are some of my most favorite movies, the movies that we were just talking about. I didn't want to just drop a woman into that role where she was the criminal. As I said, I was more interested in these extraordinary, because that's the thing about all those movies, like Tuesday Weld and Diane Keaton and Teresa Russell and Ally McGraw, like those characters are all amazing. Like they're really interesting. They're just not in a lot of the movie. Yeah. Which is exciting, because so many genres have done such a disservice to even their female supporting characters by making them one-dimensional. And so it really was about wanting to explore the authentic, we've talked so much about this, ordinary woman, a woman who's a housewife, a mother, like not even very good at the domestic responsibilities that were the stereotypical expectations at the time. And just an ordinary woman. And like, for me, it's so thrilling to think about watching an ordinary woman even be able to point and shoot a gun when her life is in danger, and the lives of the people she's come to fall in love with and create this new family with she doesn't even know if they're still alive at that moment. And so I think it was really, I think one of the most rewarding things about making the movie, because Jean is a character we've lived with for a long time. Like, we've been working on the script on and off for like 5 years. To watch Rachel bring her to life and have her achieve the thing that was so important to us, which was like, you look at the first frame of the movie and the last frame of the movie, and you would never think that that was the same character, but Rachel gets there so authentically and so beautifully. And it's exciting because it's like, real women can do all of those things. You don't have to be a superhero. You don't have to be someone who was born extraordinary. Like, you can go on a journey and learn and grow. We just don't get to see that often, especially for women.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and as an actor, it feels it's always a big, you jump, you leap off the cliff, you step off the plank when you dive into a new role, and it is nerve-wracking to trust air and space and thinking on camera that's enough and can actually achieve a great amount of storytelling. That's a scary place to live. And I'm so grateful to have been surrounded by and been in collaboration with such confident filmmakers. It takes an incredible amount of confidence to give something space and air, and to know that that is the best way to tell this story that they have created. We live in a world where, we're always trying to speed things up and to cut faster. And, we are so overstimulated that we need we need all the action to happen in every frame. And I feel like for the people that I've heard from who have really enjoyed this film, it feels like something has been brought back for them, settling into that space and letting that space sing. And so it was an incredible challenge, especially coming from a few years of ramping my internal metronome up to ungodly heights to be able to come back down and occupy someone completely new. And it was it was scary every moment, and it's such a rich experience in every moment, and really thrilling in every moment, and it's so exciting to still be able to talk about it.
Well, and on top of all the challenges as an actor, you're also producing the movie with Jordan. And I was wondering if the two of you could talk a little bit about how that came about and what your collaboration was like as producers.
Yeah. Well, these guys so generously invited me into their working partnership. And also, it feels important to point out that these are two people who have been very outspoken in our industry about the need for other kinds of stories and new leaders and new filmmakers to be given the space to tell their stories. And these are also two filmmakers who really put their money where their mouth is. I'd always had an interest in producing, but to have been elevated into this position and not only given the space to learn, but the space to find my own voice in this new space is such an incredible gift that so many more people deserve to be given. And I've been so inspired by getting to look up close at the ways in which these two continue to push themselves and continue to push at the boundaries that exist in our industry. And I will be a different producer moving forward for it. But I've talked about this so much, but one of the things that I hadn't expected was how much being involved from a much earlier stage actually helped me learn, not only as a producer, but also as an actor. We come in so late in the process when these characters have been lived with by so many other people, but not for as long by us. And we just, we show up and do our job. But the ability to sit with this character and to continue to learn from our writers and our director as the process went on really just enriched the performance in ways that I couldn't have imagined either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, for me, all of that is true. I mean, when I was first told that Rachel was interested in producing, you know, the first question I asked, does she really want to produce me? Because I've obviously, as a producer who's been around for a long time, there are people that just sort of want to credit, and there are people that actually want to do the work. And I'm pretty, you know, I have a pretty hard line about, like, if you don't want to do the work, then, you know, maybe you can take an EP credit, or maybe you shouldn't take any credit at all. And I don't hesitate to say something like that. So it was really clear to me after a conversation with Rachel that she, what?
Well, it's just funny because, like, we didn't know her then. And, like, if you know Rachel Brosnahan, you do not have to ask if she wants to do the work.
Exactly. So it was really clear that she wanted to do the work, which was wonderful. And then it's always, you know, I love having partners. Obviously we work in partnership, so it's sort of my, you know, de facto initial mode anyway, having partners and working in partnership and in collaboration with people. But it's always so interesting to me, you know, like, I appreciate you saying that we, you know, that we are looking to diversify and continue to push the boundaries of things. But for me, it just makes it makes sense. Because the thing about diversity and bringing in partners from different walks of life is that they offer different perspectives and a new experience and a new way to look at the work you're already doing. And Rachel did exactly that, not just being a woman and being my partner as a female producer and being able to have conversations through that lens, but also as the actress in the movie, she would come into producing conversations very often understanding what was required from talent, and from her in particular, but the talent at large. So just small examples of during prep, going on location scouts, looking at locations from the point of view of her as an actress living in that space. There was something really interesting about being able to look at things through that lens. And then in post, anytime we were running into something or any notes were always delivered from the point of view, not of, I don't like my performance. It wasn't a vain thing. It was, what is Jean thinking? It was from the point of view of, I've been inside this character's head and I know which way the wheels are turning. And here's how I saw it as I was moving through it. And that was a really helpful perspective.
There was one moment in particular that stands out to me in memory when you say that, which was in the scene with the cop on the side of the road. We cut away from Jean, and one of Rachel's notes in an early cut was, stay on her one more beat. And because she's thinking something, and you'll get to see her thinking it if you stay on her instead of cutting away. And we did, and it's amazing. And it's like one of my favorite moments in the movie now, because I love it. It's a moment where Jean is learning something new about herself and practicing a new skill. And so seeing her develop that is so important. And we were like cutting away for the sake of cutting away to continue the scene. But it's such an important moment, and only the person who performed that moment could know that existed.
Well, Jordan, something that Jordan just brought up about the locations reminded me of another thing I really liked about the movie, which is I love how the different living spaces that Jean is in, like how they're kind of different and how they sort of reflect different, like where she's at on her emotional journey. Like the house she starts the movie in is very different from the safe house, is very different from the kind of remote cabin. And I was wondering, Julia, if you could talk a little bit about that and about the production design aspect of the movie and kind of what you were trying to get across with those different environments.
I'm so glad that you felt that. That was something that was really important to us, even from the script level, was the way in which the environment reflected where she was on her journey and what information she had in her experience. And we have worked with the same production designer now on 3 films. Gay Buckley, she's a genius. Each of the sets that she's done for us are completely different time periods, completely different worlds, completely different styles. She can do anything. She's amazing. Yeah, we really wanted the house that she and Eddie live in to feel very unlived in, to feel very perfect and sterile and designed and quiet and lonely. Like, even though it's in the middle of a neighborhood, like you never see or hear anyone else. And then the safe house, we wanted to feel. I thought a lot about the house at the beginning of Halloween that like Michael Myers lives in, where it's like this nice little house, but like something is very wrong here, you know, that it looks like this safe, quiet neighborhood, but there's something very eerie that you just can't put your finger on. we also really wanted it to feel like a doll's house, with that chintzy doll's house wallpaper that you would stick on, and like tiny little perfect wooden furniture, and just so different from her stylish contemporary home at the beginning of the film. And then the cabin needed to feel like the most lived in space. You know, Cal's family has lived in it for a long time, and it's the only place you see family photographs and old clothes and artifacts. Like, it just feels like people live there and it feels loved. And then the city was the last environment, you know, that Jean has never even, I don't think she's ever even been to the city. She's kind of been kept in different parts of the environs of the city by her father when she was a little girl, and then by Eddie once they're married. And the city just needed to feel so different. Like, all of those needed to feel distinct and different. And then the city needed to feel like a completely other thing, you know, this big, scary, dangerous, where there's like a different crime happening on every corner, you know, the way that cities really did feel in that time, you know, that it would just be this totally new environment for her.
And Julia, to her credit, you know, has these conversations very early in production with her, with our team that we've all worked with multiple times. Gay, obviously, our production designer, Bryce Fortner, our DP, Natalie O'Brien, our costume designer. We have these conversations about just the arc of spaces over the course of the movie. You know, obviously in this movie it was a particular thing, but Fast Color was something else. And, you know, all of the movies have a very particular point of view about the shape of those spaces, color of those spaces, tone of those spaces. And there are individual meetings with all those department heads very early on to make sure everybody's working in sync with those, with all of those elements, with all of the spaces, and that we're capturing what she wants. Sure.
Well, and continuing kind of along that same subject, how did you choose Pittsburgh as the place to shoot the movie? What were the factors that went into that decision?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay. Well, you can speak to the creative part.
Yeah, I
of
mean,
it,
we were looking at a couple of, it was always really important from the beginning of creating Jean's world that we wanted to shoot in a smaller American city on the east, or sort of like eastern part of the Midwest / East Coast. We wanted it to have seasons. We wanted the seasons to change with Jean as she changes. And felt like it needed to be somewhat cold, wanted to catch fall and autumn colors in those changes that she's going through as a character. And so we were primarily thinking about like Pittsburgh, Minneapolis, Buffalo, Detroit. And obviously when you're making a film of a certain budget, it's helpful to have a state where there is crew based there. You know, you don't want to have to bring in an entire crew. It's important to have that community and that base, and also if you want,
and then also a tax credit. And then not just a tax credit, but we were able to I mean, this is getting a little bit into the weeds, but this is what really like sealed the deal with Pittsburgh was Pittsburgh has a thing in their tax credit where they'll give you additional tax credit if you shoot a certain number of days on a stage. And we didn't have a lot of stage work in our picture, but we did know that we needed to build the cabin because it was so specific in terms of where it needed to be, and that hole in the middle of it, like all the shape of it was so particular. So we needed to find a place that had a backlot that was a woodsy backlot where we could then build the cabin to qualify as stage space. So we were able to find that in Pittsburgh. We weren't able to find that
you just got real wonky.
I told you this is getting a little bit into the weeds, but like that is really what, like, because
we did a pre-scout in Pittsburgh. We shot in October, November, December.
Yeah,
we went on a pre-scout in like June and just fell in love with Pittsburgh, because part of the reason we were looking at cities like Pittsburgh, Minneapolis, Buffalo, Detroit is there's so much that's preserved there.
Yeah.
But I think once we got on the ground in Pittsburgh, we were amazed by how much from the 60s and 70s and 80s has been preserved. Some of that is preservation through neglect. You know, some of the action set pieces towards the end of the film, like the car chase and the car crash and all of that, we essentially shot in a town that's all but abandoned on the outskirts of Pittsburgh.
McKeesport, which was one of the biggest towns in the country, I think, in terms of growth in the 40s or 50s.
And it's just beautiful, and it's all there. Like all of the buildings and everything is.
The buildings are stunning.
Yeah.
One of my favorite shots is actually walking when it starts to rain after the,
Oh,
after
yeah.
the club, there's that shot of Jean walking in the wide past that series of buildings. They're amazing.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. And a little shout out to our location manager, John Adkins, who is a Pittsburgh location manager, who is just one of the best in the business, for sure.
Well, and thinking about that shot that you mentioned, Rachel, because that's one of my favorite shots in the movie too. And it reminded me of another question I had for you, which is about the costumes in the movie, because the costume design is fantastic. And I was wondering, for you as an actor, if you could talk a little bit about your collaboration with the costume designer and how the costumes helped you shape the character.
Yeah, everyone's different, but for me as an actor, costumes and hair and makeup is one of the most important pieces of transformation and one of the most important parts of storytelling. You can do all the work you want, but if the costumes and hair and makeup, if you're not in collaboration with those teams, it can lead to a kind of strange disconnect that the audience can feel. And Natalie O'Brien, our costume designer, is such a phenomenal storyteller, and she understood so much about Jean's journey before we ever had a conversation. And then we began speaking, and she pulled this incredible array of clothes that represented every step of Jean's journey. We had many, many hours of costume fittings to get it exactly right. But I mean, Jean's journey through her clothing is one of the most interesting parts of this particular film. She starts out as this glamorous woman in this very unlived in house, as Julia and Jordan said, and her clothes are really unlived in too. That kind of style is very empty. And when they're on the run, you know, they go to this Bobby Mart, they buy a whole new wardrobe on the fly very quickly, and it feels still somewhat representative of what she could pull off of her style on the fly, and with limited resources. But then as the movie goes on, you know, I always imagined that the club scene, that is one of Terry's jumpsuits, and her kind of big coat, her faux fur coat, and then obviously everything in the cabin, she's wearing the clothes that are there because the weather has changed and she wasn't prepared for it. And I feel like you get to watch this woman's exterior life get stripped away as her interior life is becoming more authentic and moving to the forefront. She's kind of been locked inside her head for a really long time. And I love that you get to see her completely raw and exposed and tired and with no makeup on at various points in the film. And it was, yeah, that collaboration was so key. The most incredible gift is to be able to look in the mirror at some point when you've been fully done up by a team of incredibly talented people and not recognize yourself. That's the goal always, for me anyway. And this team did it tenfold.
One of the cool things about the movie too is that it has this really specific sense of kind of like anthropological detail, and yet if my memory is correct, you don't ever actually like specify what the year is, what the city is, anything like that. And Julia and Jordan, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about where that decision came from and how you decided to approach period in the movie.
The way that is totally correct, and I love that you picked up on that. And because the movie was inspired by movies from the 70s, we really wanted to make a movie that felt like a 70s movie, not like a period piece. And so I think a lot of, there was a point where we didn't even really specify that it was the 70s. And in developing the script, we realized, no, we really should like make it clear visually on the screen that it's the 70s without ever saying that. We didn't want to specify time or place because we wanted it to exist within that same world of all of those 70s movies. Like it's, instead of being like 1975, it's like 70s movies, you know? And at the same time, like authenticity was something that was so important to us, but the cinematic, it's almost like the authenticity is within that world of cinema as opposed to any specific time or place in America.
That's a good way to put it.
And what kinds of conversations did you have with your cinematographer about the kind of like guiding principles you wanted for the visual style of the movie? I mean, what were some of the things you were doing, both, because I guess I have two parts to this question. One is how you kind of went about making it look like one of those movies from the 70s, but also another thing that's interesting about the visual style is this is like a real first person movie. Like you're always putting the audience in Jean's head and her point of view. And I was wondering if you could talk about both those aspects and how you and the cinematographer approached that.
This was our second film. It feels like that's not enough. I feel like we've made like 4
Yeah, I
movies
know.
with Bryce. It's so weird that it was only our second movie. This is our second, Jordan's and my second film with Bryce. He also shot our Disney Plus movie, Stargirl. That was our first time working with him. And so what was nice in particular about this movie across departments was that we had basically worked with all of our main department heads before. And so that's always really great because then you kind of like know what each other's. Am I boring you?
I sometimes you gotta yawn. I went to school for acting once upon a time, and my acting teacher in college was always like, never stifle a yawn.
Okay, fine.
Just yawn.
Just
it's
keep
okay.
Yawning. It's fine. I'll just keep going.
Interesting.
And so every time I
Anyway.
yawn, I think of that. And I'm just
Anyway.
like, it's not rude. It's just what my body's doing. Sometimes I'm tired. It's like stretching. Anyway, go ahead.
Fair enough. Anyway, I couldn't ignore it.
Thank you, Mary Poole.
Anyway, so something that's so great about working with all of our department heads again is that you're starting from a place of already understanding each other's sensibilities and modes of working. So it was such a pleasure to just dive in with Bryce because we were already starting off from a place of understanding each other's ways of working and preferences. And two of the things that I love most about working with Bryce is one, his understanding of and relationship to natural light is really quite unique. He has such a gift for finding it in the best and most like functional ways, but also that fit the story best. And especially for a film that you're trying to have live in the space of those 70s movies, utilizing that natural light and utilizing practicals as much as we did is so important. And then also he likes to work fast like I do, which again is probably very similar to the way a lot of those movies had to get made. And so it's fun because there's such care and detail to the light, but there's not preciousness. Like we move on when we can move on. Something that was really important in our early conversations with him was that we didn't want it to look like a museum piece. We didn't want it to look like a period piece. We tested vintage lenses, but we always kind of knew that we were not going to use them. And I actually think in order to, because the movie is of a classic genre, but the perspective of it is contemporary. And so we wanted to play with that in camera as well. You know, so much of what's on screen in terms of the art department and the costume design is vintage, is older stuff. And so we wanted to look at it literally through a contemporary lens. So the lenses we ended up liking the most were brand new. They were Cooks, right?
Yeah, new Cook anamorphic lenses. We shot it digitally.
And we shot it digitally. Yeah. And so I think, you know, there might be like an instinct to want to shoot a movie like this on film or want to shoot a movie like this through vintage lenses. But I actually think, again, because the perspective of it, telling the story through a woman, and as you said, a first person approach to that perspective through Jean, with a newer camera package was actually, I think, what made it feel in this moment as well as of the past, as opposed to feeling like a museum piece.
I read something somewhere that said that shooting it on film wasn't enough to make it have that authentic feel, and that we also should have cut it on film. And I was just like, aha, we succeeded.
That's pretty good.
Because we did not shoot it on film. So it was funny. It was just like one
Also,
of
if
these
you
random
shoot
things.
something on film, you have to cut it on film.
But no, I mean, I think this thing that I was reading was suggesting we should have like wet cut negatives. You know what I mean? Like, or whatever it's called. Like I've never cut negative that way, so I don't really know. Tracy, our editor, did, but
that's really funny.
But yeah, you would scan it in and then cut it still on an Avid. But they were making the suggestion that we shouldn't have even used an Avid because we've gone so far as to shoot it on film. I was just like, okay.
We did not shoot it on film.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, people.
Did I answer your question? I know. I feel like we talked about yawning and.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you know, another kind of question I have about the visual style, because I really liked how, you know, the movie is on the one hand like very precise and purposeful, but also like thinking about some of the bursts of violence, they also feel kind of nicely messy and realistic. And I was wondering, in terms of getting that balance right, are you the kind of director who, do you plan your shots really meticulously, or do you kind of show up on the day and respond to what the actors are doing and what you find there, or is it somewhere in between? How does that work?
So I should have added this to talking about our working process with Bryce. We shot list the entire film in prep. We actually start shot listing in like pre-prep with him. Like he'll come to our house and we'll start to shot list before we even relocate to wherever we're shooting. But our goal is always to have shot listed the entire movie by the time we start shooting it. And then we meet every weekend to go over that week's shot list. And part of the reason I love doing that is because it allows us to understand, you know, we've been writing the script for so long, and then you get into prep and suddenly everything is about how it looks. And so it allows us to be on the same page with Bryce in terms of how we're seeing the look of every scene. We also share that shot list with crew. I'm not opaque as a director. I think the more people know what's going on, the better, because then they can do their jobs better. And I also feel like having that foundation on the day allows us the time to experiment, because I can take risks and try something different than what we planned if I know that we have that plan in place. And I would say there are like a handful of times in a week where we'll do something unexpected because someone will see a beautiful ray of sunlight coming through a window and we're like, ooh, let's go over there. Or, you know, suddenly a character is doing something that I actually think will be better from behind than from the front. So it really allows you to know what you want, but also live in the moment. I always say it's sort of like having a safety net. Like you can jump to the trapeze with the greatest of ease if you know that there's a safety net there to catch you in case you don't make it.
We also storyboard some sequences.
Oh yeah,
too.
the action sequences we always love to storyboard. I'm not like married to them, but again, I think it helps the art department know like which parts of the set they are going to need to have prepared for said set piece or whatever. And I also think that being prepared allows you to get to that messiness. My favorite example of that in this film, and it's probably my favorite shot in the film, is the oneer of Rachel Jean making her way through the chaos in the nightclub when she busts out of the phone booth. And the only way it was able to be that messy and chaotic was because of how much we had rehearsed and prepared for it. That is Rachel in that entire take. It is shot by Bryce, our DP. They are surrounded by an amazing dance of stunt people moving in and around all of the background actors to keep everybody safe. And it's awesome. And like, it's so messy and scary and chaotic, but we all knew that it would be. Maybe Rachel and Bryce didn't 100% know, but
we were definitely a little like, but actually my favorite moment in that, which I think comes from the same thing you're talking about, is at the very end, someone accidentally bumped into Bryce. Someone accidentally nailed him and the camera sort of swings. And then because of all that rehearsal, because of all that preparation, and because he's such an expert, he swung the camera back and grabbed me in exactly the right moment. And it was instantly our favorite take as we were looking back on it at the monitor. But also to speak, I mean, that's a great example of that. But there are other examples of this. I know, Julia, you and I had talked a lot about the use of the wide and how I always think that inherently, like living and having the confidence to live in a wide shot sometimes allows for some of that messiness. One of my favorite examples of that is the dragging of the bodies and the pulling, the sort of kicking with James McMenamin, who plays White Mike. It's exhausting to pull these bodies out of the car, and you don't have the cut or the edit to help you. But that's also what allows those moments to feel so real. This is a woman who comes into this power frame by frame. This is an ordinary woman who obviously looks like me at 5'3" and 115 pounds, and is dragging these 200-pound men, and being able to sit with it in all of that sloppiness, in the moments where things nearly fell apart, or where I nearly accidentally dropped someone, or I kicked James on accident in one of those scenes, like in one of those takes, letting those moments play out to their excruciating, sometimes length on film is a real strength, but it takes a lot of confidence to live in that messiness.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think we're running low on time here, but I'm looking at the notes I took when I watched the movie again, and I have something I just want to ask about. One last thing. I just wrote down baby logistics ? Because the whole thing I kept watching the whole movie. As a filmmaker, I just kept thinking, oh my God, so much of this movie is resting on these scenes with a baby. And the baby is great, or the babies. I'm assuming it was probably twins or triplets or something like that. What was it like working with the babies, and how did that affect the movie, both for, how was it challenging, and what did it give you that was maybe pleasantly unexpected?
Well, Jordan and I knew at the script level that it was a really big risk to put so much of the movie and it working or not working in the hands of 2 infants. And it was twin brothers, Justin and Jameson Charles. And we knew we were, and also like we were already greenlit and like cast and going, because you can't like cast a baby a year in advance. Like we had to cast them like a month before we started shooting. And for whatever reason, there was some type of male twin boom in Pittsburgh in 2018. So we had like all of these twin boys' moms submit them. And the moment I saw the photograph of Justin and Jameson, I knew it was them, because as a mom and as someone who feels like motherhood is not well represented a lot of the time in films, and also that babies are, I mean, there's the joke from that movie with the fake baby arm being moved by the actor.
American Sniper.
American Sniper.
And most of the time babies in movies are a prop baby, or it's like different babies. And like babies are people, and we don't respect that enough as a society. And I think it's why we have so many messed up grown-ups. I think if we started treating babies like they mattered and they existed and they were people instead of a prop that we can just like move at will, we would be in a lot better place as a society. And so it was really important to us to have this baby be a real, fully realized character and be in as much of the movie as we could possibly do it. And everybody, I was so grateful to everyone for just getting on board with that and making it work, because it is a huge challenge. Babies can only work 4 hours a day. They are in whatever mood they are in, and you have to deal with it. But we structured, we wrote the script from a place of being aware of how often we would be able to use them and when. Obviously having twins allows you the opportunity to try again if you didn't quite get the baby in the right mood at that moment. And Rachel, and I'll let you talk a little bit about this, having to do so many difficult things in this movie, but do them holding a baby is just, it's remarkable. And she did such incredible work. Those babies loved her and trusted her, and they went through a lot together.
Yeah, it was, I've worked with babies and kids before, but never remotely at this length. And it was exciting and really intimidating. I remember a conversation early on. Oh, am I frozen? Hold on. Am I back? Sorry, I think I froze. I remember a conversation early on where I was advocating for us to have 4 babies. I was like, we gotta have 4 babies. It's impossible to do without 4 babies. And to everyone's credit, I mean, these babies were amazing kids, and they had an amazing mom and an amazing grandmother who were on set with us so often. And that was a huge part of this. There are such important collaborators in this process, and we are so lucky that this family, I mean, yeah, we could go on about them all day, but it was really amazing to see how having these babies on set brought out a side of this crew that I imagine no one has ever really gotten to see before. There were a lot of parents on this set who really got it, and non-parents who embraced it and who took the punches as they came and rolled with it and remained flexible. And it felt, I think the babies created a bigger sense of community on set. We were all at the mercy of these babies and their schedules together, and that created a real family experience. And it allowed for some of these really magical moments to happen. The one I talk about a lot, which just is beyond our wildest dreams, is that there was a day when we were shooting Jean and Harry in the closet, hiding from the men, and the babies were a bit under the weather. They were, they were toasty, and they fell asleep between takes. We'd shot a number of takes, and the baby that I was working with fell asleep in my arms. And so we're all sort of, waiting for the scene to get set up, hoping that this baby does not wake up, because then we're all completely fucked. Sorry, for lack of a better word. And and the baby fell asleep. We shot the scene, and it added this layer of urgency that obviously we knew was there, but could never have expected how it would feel in the moment. There's this incredible fleeting beat on film where in my arms, the baby wakes up for a split second. And I held my breath as a producer, maybe in that moment, was like, don't do it. And the baby fell back asleep in my arms, and it changed the scene completely. It changed every movement and every breath. And they because they're just living, they keep us all honest, and they added this magic to this movie that I don't think I've ever seen before. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, I love that closet scene. And it's funny, Julia, that you brought up the wanting the house to be like the Michael Myers house, because that was the first thing that went through my head when she went in that closet, was like, hasn't she ever seen Halloween? Don't go in there. That's a terrible place to hide. But
that scene was definitely an homage to the Halloween closet.
Yeah, the light coming through the slats. So it was very John Carpenter, which I loved. But anyway, we are out of time, but I really appreciate you all doing this. It's been great. It's a great movie, and I appreciate you all taking the time to talk with me about it.
Thanks, Jim.
This was fun. This was so
Thanks,
lovely.
Jim.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. And thanks everybody out there for watching. Jim Hemphill from the American Cinematheque signing off.